Kyle Dubas said he's going to take advantage of some teams that are in a cap crunch. And on Thursday, there's one team that's in a real cap crunch.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can follow me across all social media platforms at synonym for wet. Joined once again and always by the one and only Hunter Hodes. You can follow him on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can give our show's account a follow at LO_Penguins. And you can give our Instagram account a follow at LockedOn_Penguins. And of course, as always, we appreciate you making this part of your daily routine because we're your team every day. Don't forget that we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. And if you follow us on YouTube, make sure you've hit that notification button. That way you can be among the first to know when we drop our daily Monday through Friday episodes. Here's what we are going to do today, because I said it in the open. We know what Kyle Dubas's plan is for this offseason, and that is to be pretty active on the trade market. And there is a young player who is probably available, and we will get to him in just a minute. But after that, I got to tease ahead to this because Hunter has been working his butt off on this, and we're going to reveal parts of the Hunter Hodes draft board with a couple of players Hunter has his eyes on. I'm going to grill him over a couple of those and get you excited for some potential draft picks for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But first, Matt Duchene is back with the Dallas Stars, and that leaves the Dallas Stars with less than $500,000 in cap space. And there is one player who is an RFA on the Dallas Stars right now that if I'm Kyle Dubas, I'm giving Jim Nill a call and saying, what do you want for Mavrik Bourque? A good season for him this year, his first full year in the National Hockey League. He played all of one game in 23-24, so we're just going to pretend like that didn't happen, but plays 73 games this year for the Dallas Stars, 11 goals, 25 points, averages about 12 minutes and 40 seconds per game, time on ice. Being the fact that he is all of 23 years old, this is the exact type of player that Kyle Dubas has said he wants to go after.
He's kind of like that Philip Tomasino type of acquisition that you saw last year. They went out and got Tomasino from Nashville. He fit fairly fine. I think the Penguins are going to keep him going into next season and probably the season after unless something happens, but he's kind of like that. They're not like the same type of player, but you look at the stats, Pat, pretty identical. They can both play up and down the lineup. So this is the type of player that I really want to see Kyle Dubas go after. And he has also said that he wants to take advantage of teams that are up against the salary cap. So say if they want to get Mavrik Bourque, Dallas could be like, hey, could you maybe take one of these contracts from us? I'll just throw out Matt Dumba, for example, because the Stars, Pat, they have a lot they need to do this offseason. Less than $500,000 of cap space right now. You mentioned it. They just signed Matt Duchene to 4 years, $4.5 million per. But look at some of these other UFAs. Jamie Benn, their captain, he is a UFA. I expect him back, but he's still going to command at least, a decent price. Dadonov is there. We'll have to see if they want to bring him back. They've been wanting to bring back Mikael Granlund, that he might be pricing himself out of there. Obviously, again, Mavrik Bourque is an RFA, so I think for the Penguins, this would probably be a trade for and then sign. But they are really up against it right now. They're going to really have to make some moves to open up some cap space so that they can make other moves this offseason with their UFAs. Also, the Jason Robertson situation. I personally don't think he is on the market as much right now as maybe he was a week or two ago, because I think Dallas was just really salty by the way everything ended against Edmonton. There is no reason for them to trade Jason Robertson. That is a bona fide star in the NHL, former 109-point player. He's been an 80-point player these last couple of years. No reason to trade him, but I think Mason Marchment could be available for the Stars. All in conclusion, they are really up against it. And I do think someone like Mavrik Bourque could be expendable. Yeah, I know he's a young piece. They may want to keep him, but I could also see them being like, hey, we'll give you him, but you have to take one of our kind of contracts. You know, you look at Matt Dumba, $3.75 million for this year before he becomes a UFA in 26-27, 30 years old. If you play him for part of the season, you flip him at the deadline, you can get a little bit of a return for him. Not the worst thing in the world. I'm not that high on him at all, but in terms of where the Penguins are right now with their rebuild, I could easily see them being like, hey, we'll take him off your hands, but we want to get Mavrik Bourque as well because we want to play him up and down our lineup. You look at his numbers this year, 11 goals, 25 points in 73 games. When he was on the ice, the Stars had roughly 51% of the shot attempts, 50% of the expected goal share, 54% of the scoring chances, 52% of the high danger chances. I am all for Kyle Dubas giving the Stars a call here to see if he can maybe pry him out.
This is a really good opportunity for the Penguins if they can go out and get a guy like Mavrik Bourque, because again, he will be 23 for the majority of this season.
Yeah.
And he obviously put up some solid numbers. You see the offensive upside. You brought up the underlying numbers. He helps drive offense, and he can be part of your long-term solution. It doesn't mean that he'll be a top 6 forward. It doesn't mean he'll blossom into a superstar, but he's a guy that you can get under team control for quite a few years. He has a lot of upside. He's not going to cost you a lot to acquire. The other thing you brought up as well is Matt Dumba. I look at Matt Dumba and think they might not even need to worry about acquiring him because he is a classic buyout candidate for the Dallas Stars because he won't cost them that much against the salary cap. And that could actually factor pretty well in the Penguins' favor because you could then sign Dumba to some nothing contract while he gets paid on the buyout, and then you can flip him for assets.
They could do that, but I think they would probably prefer trading him in some sort of deal. Same thing for Mason Marchment. I think they're going to try to get out of that contract and open up some cap space. Those are the two ones that really come to mind. Maybe Ilya Lyubushkin, if you want to throw him in there too. But I think the buyout for them, that's probably the last resort, but it's still an option. I don't want to just discount that.
But at the end of the day, this is one of the teams, if you're Kyle Dubas, that you have to keep an eye on because them, Colorado, Tampa Bay, and even their old pals in St. Louis, they are really up against it going into July 1st, even with the big cap hit. And we kind of talked about
you can throw Vegas in there too, because I think they're going to take a big run at Mitch Marner, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and for Vegas, they have just under 10 million, so they have room to operate, but they're going to need to open up more to take a big swing, which we know that they're going to do. But there are still a handful of teams that, even with this explosion of the salary cap, don't have a lot of room to operate. And that is exactly who Kyle Dubas needs to target. And I started to bring it up there, the Oilers as well. And that's just because not just this offseason, but next offseason, they have a lot they need to get done. And they have a lot of pieces that they need to either bring back or build around. And as of right now, they've only got a little under 12 million to work with. And we saw what happened in the Stanley Cup final. It wasn't that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl didn't get it done. They did everything they could. They need to improve their depth. And right now, they don't have a ton of money to do that. And that's going to become a big problem, especially with a Connor McDavid extension looming and a bunch of other extensions that they're going to have. So if you're Dubas, you're calling a lot of Western Conference teams right now. Dallas, Colorado, in the East, Tampa Bay, St. Louis, and obviously Edmonton and Vegas, because they're going to want to do a lot. They don't have a ton of money to work with.
Right. Edmonton, you did bring up Victor Arvidsson yesterday. I will say, Pat, he does have a no move clause, so he'd have to waive to come to Pittsburgh. And we'll have to see if he would want to waive in that hypothetical deal that you put out there for Tristan Jarry. I see plenty of players have waived for rebuilding teams, but I've also seen plenty that have no interest in going there. And you can't blame them, just because a lot of the players don't want to go to those type of teams. They want to go win right away, but you also see the opposite, where some players like, you know what, I'll go help out some of the young guys here, and then maybe I'll go to a winning team right after. But Edmonton, The McDavid extension is probably going to be, that's going to be 14, probably 15 million a year, if I had to guess. You have the Bouchard extension. I think that's going to be 10 million plus per year. You already have the Draisaitl one. As I said on the Wednesday episode, you're looking at about 40 million combined, just about give or take, for McDavid, Draisaitl, and Bouchard. And they're going to have to find somehow, some way to improve their depth. It's not paying Trent Frederick, that's for sure, especially on an 8-year term. But just to round out this segment, when it comes to Dallas and Mavrik Bourque, Kyle Dubas has got to be all over that. It's very much a Philip Tomasino type deal. I would be looking to swing as many deals like those as possible this offseason, while still also checking in on the likes of, JJ Peterka, Marco Rossi, etc., like some of the bigger RFAs. So you can check in on those. And if it makes sense, okay, sure. But you definitely got to be checking in on those Tomasino type deals. And I think Mavrik Bourque very much qualifies there.
Fits right into that category. A lot of upside. It's not going to cost you a lot, both in trade and in signing. So that is certainly somebody we want to see Kyle Dubas target this summer as the offseason develops. But that is going to do it for our opening segment. When we come back, it's finally time. Hunter Hodes reveals not all of it, but parts of his draft board as we creep closer and closer to the 2025 NHL draft. Stay with us for that. You're not going to want to miss it. But first, we've got to tell you about today's sponsor, and that is Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios, it's one of the highest protein nuts, and each 1 ounce serving of these nuts has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and those better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I'm a huge fan of the no shells variety. It is a perfect grab and go snack to give me that little protein boost that I need during the day, rather than going to the vending machine and getting something sugary and salty and gives me that protein boost, like I said. But if you're looking for that classic crunch, the In-Shells classic variety is always a favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit Wonderful Pistachios to learn more. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Penguins. I'm Patrick Damp, right alongside one of the hardest working men in the business, the one and only Hunter Hodes. And like I said before break, it is time to reveal parts of the Hunter Hodes draft board as we look forward to the Penguins having the 11th overall pick in the 2025 NHL draft. And Hunter, we've been talking about this guy for quite a while, and there's an outside chance he might still be available come 11, and that is right winger Victor Eklund. Buddy, this is your show. This is your game. Why should the Penguins sprint to the podium to take Victor Eklund?
Well, first off, Pat, I'm definitely not Scott Wheeler out here. I'm not Corey Pronman or any of these other great people, Will, aka Scouching on YouTube. All those people do such a great job. Jesse Marshall also does a great job with their draft boards and draft prospects. I mainly just looked at several guys who I think could be available at number 11 for the Penguins in the first round, or number 12. And I've got my endorsement list officially finalized. I actually finalized it a couple of days ago. And I think now is the perfect time to really go into it. We're about a week away from the draft. We're going to be diving into a whole bunch of different players over the next week before we get to the draft late next week. And yes, we talked about this player a little bit on the pod before, but Victor Eklund, he is the number 5 player on my big board. I have him behind the big 4 of Schaefer, Misa, Martone, and Higgins, and those are the order that I have them in. I have Victor Eklund number 5. That's going to be a hot take to some. I totally get it. I know others have, Frondell higher than him. Hot take. I think Eklund is a bit better than Frondell, though I also know that Frondell is more than likely going to go ahead of Eklund. I think Frondell, I've seen him going as high as 4 in some mock drafts. Would not be surprised if he potentially goes above the big 4 on my big board. Of course, that's Misa, Schaefer, Martone, and Higgins. I know a lot of teams definitely really like him. But when it comes to Victor Eklund, 19 goals, 31 points in 42 games this year in Sweden as a right shot winger. some people are going to look at those stats and be like, oh, they're not that good. He's not even at a point per game. He's 18 years old going up against grown men. I promise you, people, these are very good stats. He's only 180 pounds. I'm sure we might get some people saying, oh, he's not that big. He's not that big. Trust me. He takes it to some of these bigger players around the net. More on that in just a second. He also played in the U20s for Sweden, the World Juniors, 2 goals, 6 points in 7 games. I really like his skating. His release is nice. He can be a bit deceptive at times with it. Again, people are going to be a little bit concerned about his size, but he can bulk up. I'm really not too concerned about that. His playmaking ability is also still fairly solid. He has really good vision on the ice, good hockey IQ. He's a bit patient when he has the puck on his stick. Really good around the net front. I still think that's my favorite part of his game. Even though he's a bit smaller, he takes it to some of these big grown-ass men around the net. His hand-eye coordination is absolutely awesome. I would be over the moon if Victor Eklund is there at number 11. And you said it, there was an outside shot. I think with the way that some of these mocks have been coming in and stuff, and the way that this first round could be so random, I think there is a realistic chance that he is there at number 11. And if he is, I want Kyle Dubas and Wes Clark to sprint up to the stage. I think this is a quintessential Wes Clark, Kyle Dubas pick. And I think if he is there, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. I think if he is there at 11, I think he will be pick. Been wrong before. I'll be wrong again going forward, but I do think he will be the pick. I absolutely love this player, Pat. Those are just a lot of my thoughts on him.
Here's the biggest thing, because I've heard the same concerns about Eklund when it comes to size. And again, you look at the numbers, right? 5'11", 161, and you hear that and think he's got to be a string bean. He's not. The guy is sneakily built. It sounds
he's bulked up a bit. Like he's not 160 anymore. It's right around like the 180 range.
But that's the thing I wanted to bring up is that when you watch his tape, this guy plays with no fear and is not afraid to forecheck. No. He will go to the dirty areas, whether it's the corners, the front of the net, on the wall in the defensive zone. He is not afraid to use both his height and his weight, regardless of where it is. This is a guy who is really fitting that mold of good power forward in the modern day NHL. He's not big for nothing. He's not just a big brute who runs into things and can't skate. He's 5'11". Like you said, he's bulked up from his initial scouting report, which did have him at about 160.
Yeah. Depending on where you look, like there's like elite prospects, for example, they'll have him at 170. You'll see other places they'll have him at 180. I'm just going off 180, but sometimes like different websites have like different weight, but it's still right around that range. We know we're going to get some people that may say he's not that big. Trust me. A, he can bulk up, and B, it hasn't really mattered so far because he is taking it to some of these grown men right around that net front area.
But again, to what I was saying, he's the kind of player that is fitting that mold of modern power forward. He's not just big and bruising. He can move. It's not like he's a burner. He's not incredibly fast. He's not going to be beating Connor McDavid in any races or anything like that, but he is not slow. He has a good, quick first burst, and he can get moving. So again, this is the type of player that when you look at the direction that the NHL is going, and it's not just because of the Florida Panthers. I know that's the sexy pick. I know because they're the defending 2-time Cup champions, everybody thinks that's what the league is going to be. But it's been more than just the Florida Panthers. We have seen from a myriad of teams that they are valuing hard-nosed but talented players. It's not just big bullies. It's guys who are very well-rounded. And you look at Eklund, that's his game.
I wouldn't call him a power forward right now. I think maybe he could develop into that a little bit more, but I think power forward might be a little bit of a stretch to me in my opinion, at least just from the tape that I have watched. I think he's a bit more silkier than a power forward is, in my opinion. But still, if he's there, man, I'd be all over that. He's not going to be ready right away. I think he still needs another year, if not maybe 2 of seasoning, but I still see him developing into a solid, maybe middle 6, top 9 forward in the NHL. He is my fifth favorite prospect in this class.
He is certainly one that I'm keeping an eye on and that I've been watching some tape on. And I think that the closer we get, if he continues to be available, the closer we get to the Penguins pick, I am right there with you in that he is probably my most preferred. If they stay at 11, if they don't trade up, then that's a whole other conversation that we'll have to have. And before I send it to break, because we're going to do one other player on today's episode that Hunter's been looking at, I would be remiss if I did not give a bit of a shameless plug to a good friend of the show, and that is Jesse Marshall. Real ones remember, back in the day, Face-Off Factor. And if you didn't know, now you know. It is back. It's faceofffactor.substack.com. That's Jesse Marshall. We're going to have Hunter here for draft prospects, and I guarantee you before we get to the draft, Jesse will be on this show to talk to us about prospects. But we're not done talking about prospects. We got one more we want to discuss with Hunter when we come back, so stick around. We've got a little bit more to talk about. Welcome back in to the Thursday edition of Locked On Penguins. I'm Patrick Damp, right alongside Hunter Hodes, and let's keep it going now. We talked about a prospect that you've got on your big board, Hunter, that you would like the Penguins to take. We're going to talk about one that's not low, but isn't exactly one that we hope the draft doesn't turn out that this is who they take at 11, but it's a guy you're very interested in. And Hunter, I think you're going to be able to say this better than me. I'm going to give it a shot. It is Lyndon Lakovic, who played for the Moose Jaw Warriors this past season. 6'4", 190 pounds, according to some estimates. And he is another winger that you would like to see them maybe take if they have the opportunity. Give us the rundown on this guy.
Well, Pat, you were close. Oh, sorry. I didn't do it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, Pat, you were close. It's Lynden Lakovic, but hey, it's okay. No one is going to roast you for that in the comments, at least I don't think. And let me say this about Lakovic. He is on my board. He's just a bit lower than some of the other players that I have on it. He was actually one of the final players that I watched to really round out my big board. And I wouldn't be upset if the Penguins took him, but I guess I wouldn't be over the moon either. There's definitely things that I like about his game, but there's other parts where it's like, ooh, it's not all the way there yet. But here, let's just get into the basics here. 27 goals, 58 points in 47 games this season for Moose Jaw and the WHL as a left winger. Biggest thing that stands out to me, his shot, especially his wrist shot. If you give him time to load up that sucker, he is going to make you pay every single time. It's a really nice release. He knows how to pick corners. He knows how to find the soft areas in the net. Trust me, man, it is a really nice release. I think that's my favorite part about his game. But thing is, he's 6'4". Someone like that should be pretty ratty. He's not. Like, he'll go to the net at times, but it's not as often as I want him to be. I think he could stand to be a little bit rattier. I want him to use that big frame, use that body around the net a bit more, and kind of just clean up the garbage. I just don't see him doing that as much. I think it's something that I really want him to work on. I think he's more of a distant shooter, in my opinion, so I want him to really work on maybe being a bit more of a rat just because he's 6'4". He's a big dude. Use that to your advantage. Now, his skating. I think he could use a little bit of work there. I understand that he's big, but I think clunky is the word I keep coming back to. It's just really clunky to watch. I think he could definitely use some work on that. And then finally, I do think he sees the ice really well. He has nice vision. He's a bit patient with the puck. He doesn't usually rush his decisions. But biggest couple of things for me, I want him to be a little bit more hard-nosed around the net, and I want him to really work on his skating. Really nice release, but when I compare him to some of the other players that are a bit higher on my board, and I'll just tease that right here, like a Jake O'Brien, like a Carter Bear, and if you want to rat people, Carter Bear is your dude. That's a Patrick Hornquist, Tomas Holmstrom type player. Looks like he's getting back to being healthy after the Achilles injury. We'll talk about him as we get closer to the draft, but when I compare someone like Lakovic to, again, Carter Bear, Jake O'Brien, even a Brady Martin, and we're not even sure he's going to be there because his draft stock is really rising, I just have him a bit lower than some of those dudes, even a Ben Kindle, Cullen Potter. We'll get to those guys pretty soon too, but he's just a bit lower on my list. I wouldn't be disappointed if he were the pick, but I also wouldn't be over the moon like I would for some of the other players that are on my board.
For sure. And of the little bit of tape that I have seen of him, the thing that worries me is that he doesn't use his size. And I don't mean
that's
that.
correct.
I don't mean that in he needs to become more physical. I don't disagree with your point that he needs to be a little bit more ratty. I think that just needs, at this point, the way the NHL is going, a requirement for just about anybody, because that's kind of where the sport is headed at this moment in time. But you bring up his size. He's 6'4", and you want to see him be a little bit, I guess, more aggressive on the forecheck. You want him to be, you want him to use it to his advantage. At 6'4", he is going to be one of the biggest players on the ice, or at the very least, he is going to be in the mix for being one of the bigger players on the ice. And it's not even that he plays small. It's just, you are likely bigger than most players you're going up against, especially at the junior level when you watch his junior tape. And you don't have to be Scott Stevens. You don't have to go out there and light guys up, but lean into them, use your reach, use your size advantage over these guys to retrieve pucks a little bit better, to make offensive opportunities occur better. And while I do think some of that is he's still at an age where these are guys who shoot up 6-7 inches in a quick amount of time, so they're not quite used to it. So you hope a player like this grows into that size. But you look at the rest of his game, a lot of it's there, especially for a winger. The shot is solid. He isn't the best playmaker, but he's certainly not lacking in it. And for a guy that size, he moves well enough. But if he can grow into playing that size, if he can grow into playing at 6'4", that's a pretty high ceiling player.
Yeah, I think he just needs to really get used to being 6'4" and be like, oh, I can mow down some of these players around the net. Let me be a little bit rattier. I think that's, again, still a really big thing for me. Skating, I hear you, but still, I keep coming back to clunky. It's the first burst is kind of a bit awkward to watch. Like, he has an okay motor, but I still want to see it get better.
Well, I will make a bit of a comparison, and obviously it's not a one-to-one. Looking at his tape, it reminds me a lot of Jordan Staal. There were always knocks on Jordan Staal's skating, but it's because he was a taller guy. And one stride for him is 2, 3, 4 strides for somebody else. So it looks clunky, but then if you're able to, especially nowadays with the amount of footage, the amount of camera angles there are, you zoom out and you see, yeah, it's a clunky stride, but he's covering more ice in that one stride than most players. And that was always kind of the knock on Staal. But then when you would zoom out and watch him go, you would go, oh yeah, it's because he's a large human being.
Right.
His stride may not look great, but that one stride is getting him further than most.
And he also worked on it quite a bit. But I think with Lakovic, it's still, again, very much a work in progress for me. But hey, this is just the start. We're going to keep doing segments, like this throughout the next week. We'll get into Jake O'Brien, Carter Bear, Cullen Potter, Kayshawn Aitchison, why I am higher on him than others are, Jackson Smith, Radim Murtka, all these people. So stay tuned. This next week's going to be a lot of fun on the show with the draft board finally coming out. It's been a lot of fun watching a lot of these prospects. This is probably, when I compare it to when I started doing this a couple years ago for the pod, this year I would say is the most prepped I have been for a draft since I started doing this. So I'm super excited.
Hey, you heard the man, and there's not a whole lot I can add to that. Stay tuned. Hunter and I are going to talk a lot more about prospects as we get closer and closer to the NHL draft and the Penguins' first round pick. But that is going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. And you know what tomorrow is, ladies and gentlemen. It's Friday. That means it's the return of Fan Take Friday. We will put a post out on our YouTube channel as well as our social media accounts for you to drop questions, hot takes, whatever you want to get off your chest about the Pittsburgh Penguins. And we will read those on the show on Friday, as well as bring you any news that might happen between now and then. But for now, for Hunter Hodes, I'm Patrick Damp. Thank you as always for tuning in, and we will be back on Friday.